Okay, let's talk about what should be in your board expectations. I get this question a lot, and I think a lot of times it comes from nonprofit leaders who are frustrated and discouraged with how things are going with their board currently, and they're thinking, okay, what are those things I should put in my board expectations to make sure I am abundantly clear regarding what I want the board to do within this organization. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I am all about vet, right on the front end with board members. And your board expectations document is the best tool you have to help you vet potential board members. And there are very few things you can do that will drain your organization and you of vital energy than adding the wrong person to your board. Okay, so let's dive in here and talk about some things that are important to have in your board expectations. When it comes to board expectations, there are three topics that always come up. Number one is time. Number two is talent. Number three is treasure, right? And I agree with all three of those, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about some other things that you might want to include as well. But from a time standpoint, you just want to lay out what is the time expectation for board members within this organization, right? Sometimes it's 60 to 80 hours a year, and that breaks down between 4 to 6 hours each month or something like that, right? Or maybe it's like, hey, we're super busy April through August, but things slow down thereafter. Ultimately, you just want to give the potential board member a good idea of what that looks like and have a quality conversation with them regarding their calendar and what it looks like for them to plug in, right? This is one of the first vetting mechanisms you have from a time standpoint. Do they have the time capacity to plug in with your organization in a quality manner? And if they don't, they're not a good board member, right? I don't care how awesome they would be otherwise. If they don't have the time, now's not the time for them to join your board. Talent, number two, is also important, right? Obviously, we're asking our board members to jump in and use their talents for the organization. This is a great way to just make the point that, this board is not about you just showing up and looking pretty, right? You got to get in here, you got to work, and there are some expectations involved in that. And then number three, the treasure expectations have to do with the financial contribution of board members to your organization. And I think that every board should have a financial contribution requirement. I think it's really important for board members to put their money where their mouth is, right? And I think it's really important for them to lead the way financially for the organization, right? To show others in the community that there are people that believe in this thing enough to invest significantly in the mission. Board members should be on the front end of that. Okay, so let's talk about some other things that you might want to consider having in your board requirements, right? One thing that's always in my board requirements and that I plaster all over a lot of documents is my vision, mission, and values, right? That's something that you've got to make sure you are abundantly clear with to the whole community, but in particular, somebody you're going to invite into the door of your organization at such a deep level, right? The last thing you want to do is get 6 months into having a board member on the board and they don't completely understand what you do on a deep level, right? And that sounds silly, but it happens, okay? So just making sure, I know it sounds goofy, it sounds fundamental, but go over those things with a prospective board member and make sure you're both on the same page about what those mean on a very deep level. Because even with the best written mission statement, right, there can be confusion regarding what that really looks like and how it plays out within the organization. So vision, mission, values can be an important thing to have on your board expectations document. Another thing is simply the process for becoming a board member, right? This document is going to be a document that you'll share with people, maybe via email, people who you think might be good board members and they're interested in learning more about what your board expectations look like. So right at the top of the document, lay out for them, hey, this is the process that we're going to go through. For me, it was 3 meetings. It was a meeting with me, it was a meeting with the board chair and me, and it was attendance at a board meeting where the whole board got eyes on this person before either side made a decision regarding joining the board, right? And I made it abundantly clear in my board expectations document too that this was a process of both sides discerning if this was the right fit for that person right now, right? I almost framed it as a calling. Are you called to join us in this endeavor, within a board position? Another thing you might want to consider adding to your board expectations document is anything related to the culture of the board that you want to share and go over with a potential board member, right? What's the feel you want for this board, this group? Do you want it to be super professional? Do you want it to be more casual? Do you want it to be a working board? Do you want them to just focus on bylaws, or, do you want it to feel like a group of friends? Whatever it might be, in your best words, just start to try and outline the culture for this group. For me, a lot of my meetings started out super professional, and I slowly shifted them to a more relational, and trying to create a very tight-knit group of people who all knew one another well, in an attempt to try and help them become more motivated to work alongside one another. But whatever it might be, right? I think it's really important that you outline some culture pieces for your board within these expectations, so that everybody's on the same page with respect to the feel of the board. Of course, you want to put in there your meeting frequency and attendance expectations, right? Do you meet monthly? Do you meet every other month? Do you meet quarterly? What are your expectations as far as attendance at meetings go? I would recommend 100%. I think it's silly to not have any expectation, or to have an expectation below 100%, right? The idea here is that you attend every meeting, right? And we all know that people get sick, or relatives pass away, whatever it might be. But if you set the attendance standard at 75%, for some reason, to me, that just gives an open door to, like, well, I just won't go to this one, right? And it's like, no, we to accomplish what we need to accomplish for this organization, we all need to be here if possible, right? And then communications expectations, right? This is a really important one for me. As a nonprofit leader, you get ignored a lot, right? Whether you're reaching out for donations or partnership, whatever it might be, we tend to get ignored a lot. And there are very few things as discouraging as getting ignored by a board member, right? You send out an email to your whole board and crickets. Nobody responds. So I put in my board expectations, hey, you're expected to respond to not only my emails, but emails of other staff and of other board members, right? We're not going to just receive emails and ignore them. I had some expectations on there regarding being present at 100% of meetings, right? Being punctual and on time. We're going to start this meeting on time with or without you. And it's okay, again, stuff happens. People don't always make it on time. But if it becomes a recurring thing, we're going to have a talk about it, right? And then I wanted them to be communicative. I wanted them to respond. There's nothing worse than just crickets on a board or at a board meeting. Another thing you might want to consider is inputting expectations regarding attendance at non-board meetings, right? At other nonprofit events that aren't board meetings. Again, you don't want board members to get the idea that they can just attend board meetings and not show up to the front lines at all. You want them to be involved in those, so go ahead and lay that out within your board expectations document. Another thing that you want to make sure you put in there is any sort of expectations regarding contributions of people and money, right? And contributions of people sounds funny, but here's what I mean by that. I always had a financial requirement for my board, and then I also had a people requirement. And what I mean is that they were recommended. I didn't call it requirement, but I recommended that they brought 10 people to see the front lines of the organization each year, right? So we might have one event where they invite, the whole slew of 10 people, or maybe they've just got, some tours that they schedule, and they invite people to come see the front lines. Again, we're trying to always invite people and resources into our organization. So not only did they have to cut a check to the organization, but they also had to invite other people to come and see the front lines of the organization. And then, lastly, just something that you want to put in there as well is any sort of expectations regarding evaluations, right? So, and by this, I mean board member evaluating staff. I mean staff evaluating board member. I mean self-evaluations for board members. What I would do is at the end of each year, just have a sit-down meeting with each board member, and I'd have them self-evaluate first, and then we'd discuss during our meeting how I thought things went, how they thought things went. So there was an evaluation going both ways, but you want to make sure you include that into anything as well. And one thing I forgot, I didn't forget it, but it's sort of a sub point on something I've already mentioned. If you have a yearly board retreat, right, you want to go ahead and put that in your expectations as well, so that they know ahead of time that, hey, the second Saturday of every January we go to so-and-so for the weekend. Go ahead and put that in there. That helps them plan it on their schedule and calendar. and keeps from any challenges there too. So I hope that fills in the question a little bit more for you, and you can kind of evaluate your current expectations or develop new ones, whatever it might be, based off of some of these recommendations. Again, take all of this with a grain of salt. You've got to do what's best for your organization. So adapt what I've said, shift it to fit what works best for you. But again, at the end of the day, I think it's really important to just become crystal clear on your expectations, put them in a document, and go over them line by line with any sort of prospective board member to make sure there's no confusion before you both say yes to them joining the board.